Thanks very much to all of you, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here today on behalf of the Karratha and Districts Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Great to see you all here. What I would like to do to kick off for the day, and we do have a great crowd, and we have people from all over Western Australia and Australia here, and quite a few of our Karratha businesses and Karratha members of the KDCCI have made their way down. So what I would like to do to start is maybe just, if each of you can just, in a couple of minutes, just sort of explain what you're doing here and how you fit into the panel today and what your role is. So if you'd like to start at this end, Clayton.
Yes, so I'm Clayton Walker. I'm the Managing Director of what we call the Pilbara Supply Chain. And what that really is the rail, port, operations center, utilities, strategic planning, and towns and accommodation for the business, which means I have about 4,000 employees. Over 3,000 are based up in the Pilbara working in that area. So I spend quite a bit of time up there and have a bit of an understanding of what goes on in Karratha.
Hi, I'm Mark Loquan, CEO of Yara Pilbara. We are the kind of new players up in the Pilbara region. We took over the operatorship of the Burrup Fertilizers company that was there before. So we are also now constructing a new technical ammonium nitrate facility next door. It has gone up pretty fast. It's going to be starting up in the third quarter of next year. And we are also not a FIFO company, so we actually build houses for employees. So I think it fits pretty well in the discussion that I heard this morning in terms of trying to get sustainability in Karratha and impacting housing and development in the area.
Deidre Willmott, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Western Australia. So we're the state's peak industry organisation. We have over 9,000 members from every industry and every region of the state, businesses large and small. Most of our members, over 90%, are small and medium enterprises. We work very closely with the regional chambers on issues throughout the state. We're probably best known for our policy and advocacy work, representing business to government and on issues of public concern. We also provide services to make it easier to do business for our members, so particularly in advice on employee relations, industrial relations, but also in training and apprenticeship work. We have the state's largest VTEC, so Vocational Training and Employment Centre for Aboriginal people. We also provide extensive services for international trade for our members.
Thanks, Deidre.
Thanks. Yeah, Richard Sellers in the department. You would well know that we do a lot of the approvals work, and certainly probably less known is that we do through our geological survey a lot of pre-competitive geological information to help attract exploration. But the majority of our work in the Pilbara is around compliance, both with safety and environment, and the approvals up front and ongoing. With the extent of the mining throughout Western Australia, it's one where we have only a reasonably small presence in Karratha at any one time, and we tend to do a lot of our work coming up from Perth or some of our other offices to the Pilbara and other regions to go to individual mines. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks very much, all of you. Now, Richard, I might start with you. How has the operating environment changed following the recent transition from a construction to production phase of development?
Sure. Obviously, there's a lot of media around the amount of money that was being spent on construction, and when we were travelling and talking to future investors here, it was a little bit gets lost in translation about how the real period of ongoing monetisation of these assets is in the production. We watched during that build phase the number of workers increase markedly. Certainly there are a lot of projects that were going through a rapid process to get into production. Now in this stage where we're seeing the increased production, we're seeing some bottleneck issues. But on top of that, of course, we've got a tightening in commodity values, and what that's actually done is meant that we've had a lot more focus around our safety and compliance and working with large and small companies to make sure that the obligations are still being met. So it's part of it was business as usual in that we went into a production phase. You'd expect to see that in this cycle. The other part, which was predicted by some, certainly not by others, that we would be in such a tightening environment around our costs, and with that actually a lot of our work increases because we're looking for innovative ways to get the same sort of safety and environment outcomes with industry without creating too much impost.
Thanks, Richard. And to all of you, and probably Deidre, I can get you to answer this first if you like. What do you think the major business investment opportunities are coming out of the transition, if you like, or the change for industry service providers?
Well, we've certainly, in terms of the broad trends, we're seeing a change. The labour market has eased. In 2008, more than nearly 80% of employers said that skill shortages and shortages of people was their single biggest issue. That's dropped to 8% in the last quarter. So I think everybody is finding that when they're out there looking, they've got a good choice of people from whom to employ. At the same time, wages growth has slowed to 2.4% in June, which is the lowest since the early 2000s. And we're seeing that reflected in the mining industry, just over 1% growth in construction and 1.9% in mining. Population growth has also slowed to 2.5%, which is still the fastest in Australia, but coming off considerably higher levels for the state. And we're also seeing, but what we're also seeing is that business confidence has probably gone lower than it should, and a recent NAB survey has confirmed our views that the economy is actually much stronger than business confidence levels are reflecting at the moment, when they found that business conditions in Western Australia are the strongest in Australia, but business confidence here is actually the lowest. In terms of future opportunities, what we're seeing as other opportunities, or other people start looking, and there's more space for people to talk about other opportunities, is a lot of interest in agribusiness, in food manufacturing and export. Tourism, we're hearing a lot more about tourism and investment in new tourism opportunities. Education is also an area where Western Australia has had strength in the past. The dollar coming down is now helping raise those opportunities again. And an area that we don't think about so much in Western Australia is manufacturing, but our manufacturing industry has actually grown at the same rate as our mining industry, about 5% per annum on average over the last 10 years, and is increasing employment, and there's opportunities there to supply into ongoing producing assets as well as growing export markets.
Yeah, thanks, Deidre. And Mark and Clayton, on that same question, the major business investment opportunities that you're seeing for industry service providers, Mark?
Well, you know, we're at a point where we are constructing a new plant, so we're certainly not in the operational phase yet. But I mean, right now we have 500 people working, close to 400 to 500 people, I would say, working on the TAN site. Of course, the opportunities we see is that we have a new plant on our site, and therefore the opportunity for suppliers and contractors to provide the maintenance services, stocking of parts. We still find it's a bit expensive to keep flying things into Karratha when it's not available. So if we can somehow get into the area of hubs of manufacture and services, because we now have Woodside, Pluto, we have our plant, we have the new plant coming on. Perhaps there's some synergies now that could be capitalized in terms of these industrial estates and how they actually are providing services and keeping our costs down. In terms of the labor supply, as Deidre is saying, we're also noticing that we're hiring some people now, and of course we're seeing that we have good opportunities in terms of people available and the quality of people as well on the market. So that has certainly helped us at the time when we're hiring. And of course there's a whole range of services from the operations and maintenance type services, environmental control, all of these things. I think there's a real opportunity also for safety,
Yes.
to provide the safety, to raise the bar I would say, on the safety standards. Of course, we have the regulators who we work closely with, and that's always very appreciated. But of course, I think there's an opportunity to get a common standard for safety training and passports in a growing industry.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, the safety has been a big message coming out from quite a few of the players in the industry. And Clayton, the same question to you, talking about the business and investment opportunities. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, Clayton, is how different are your company's business growth strategies today as compared to 5 years ago? Because I think that would be an interesting one for everyone.
Yep. I think first off, just to talk about what's going on in the industry, is we're wrapping up our next wave of expansion. And what we want to do as a business is add value, right? So we get to that point where we want to sweat our assets and get a return on that investment. That means there's opportunities for people to come in and help us do that through business improvement activities, helping us achieve greater safety, more efficiencies, better compliance, all those different areas where people can provide a service that allows us to be smarter, safer, faster at delivering iron ore to our customers. I think there's some good opportunities for people to work in that space, as well as what Mark was mentioning around those delivery hubs and how do we gain on the synergies of the volume instead of each of the industries up there pulling in their own piece. Maybe a central hub that we all go to is something that does interest me.
Yeah.
But I think as far as where our growth strategy goes, I don't think our strategy's changed. It's always been about how do we add the most value to our shareholders.
Yep.
And we'll continue to maximize that every chance we get.
Thanks, Clayton. And I think the
Kim,
hubs is a really important thing. Yes, Richard?
Oh, sorry, I thought we'd move on to the next question.
No, you're
So,
right.
just in terms of the opportunity, it might be of interest to people to know that what we're seeing through my door, certainly in the last 6 months, is that in the massive growth phase we had a lot of people come into Perth and Western Australia and the Pilbara who have all sorts of science-related expertise, part of research centres, and now we're actually seeing some of those come to us with innovative ideas. So they want to broker around to do that efficiency, to actually look for better ways to transport product, to look for better ways to actually cut costs and maintain the environment and safety. And so that's actually an opportunity that we're seeing where how that'll translate is how successful they are in brokering it around through Deidre and others to members to see who'll pick it up.
Absolutely. Thanks, Richard. I think I have another question for all of you. What do you think, from a resource industry point of view, what will the Pilbara need to still be competitive and still be a leader in 5 years from now, and where will the major competition come from? I'm happy for all of you to answer that. I know it's a big question. So, Clayton, would you like to start on that one? Or you can handball it if you like.
No, look, I'll have a crack. I think if you look at the way Karratha is growing and what's going to happen in the future is people have invested a lot of money in building these plants or shipping facilities. They're going to be there for a long time. So I think 5 years from now, there's still going to be a need. What it is making Karratha an attractive place. And I think the city's done some great things with the Leisureplex, the parks, the renovation of Main Street. Those things make it more attractive to get to where we can encourage more people to keep coming rather than choosing a different route. And I think that's what's going to make Karratha more attractive than some other cities to live in.
I think so too, Clayton. I think with the Pilbara City's vision, what you're seeing is Karratha being a place where people choose to live, not just choose to work.
Exactly.
And there's a real ownership. People are feeling very proud of their city, of their new city, and so they should. So I agree. I think it's social amenities and infrastructure that's the key to developing Karratha further and reaching that goal of that population by 2035.
Yeah. And I think as we continue to see that growth, the other two areas is continuing to develop the health and the education. When we bring people through, those are some of the first questions that they ask us. So how do we continue to raise the bar in the health services that are provided as well as the education? Those are some of those foundational blocks of what we need to make sure that Karratha's here to stay for a long time.
Absolutely. Mark?
Yeah, of course, our business operates with the main raw material being natural gas. And when you talk about competition in the fertilizer world, it's not in Karratha. It's actually in places like the US where you have the shale gas, and you have Australian companies going to invest in Louisiana. So it's really about, in terms of gas policy, it's going to be interesting how it evolves. With so much gas around in Western Australia, what kind of policies are set to encourage or enable some future investment in the area as compared to going to some other part of the globe. So I think that is one issue to consider in terms of policy going ahead. I fully agree with in terms of the quality of life and amenities. That's obviously been getting great attention with the Leisureplex. A lot has changed in the last couple of years, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a health campus and all of these things going on. It would probably be good to have a very clear direction on diversification in WA, and of course agriculture. I heard there's a couple pilot plots coming up there in WA. I read about a discovery of a lot of water under the Pilbara region, which could boost agricultural expansion, and I think that is probably areas that are probably a bit green now, but it could be quite big for an area like Pilbara if it comes to fruition.
Exactly, diversification has been a key word for the whole day. Deirdre, on the what the Pilbara region from a resource perspective needs to do to be competitive?
So in the last 10 years, the Pilbara region has grown from 15% of the state's regional economy to 25% and is now larger than the southwest and the midwest. So, we're starting now from a great base in terms of the nature of the economy there and the numbers of people already living there. So we would absolutely say that diversity is critical, and one of the most important ways to drive diversity is to keep monitoring the costs of doing business. How easy is it to come in and start a new business? If somebody's got a great idea for a tourism model, how easy is it for them to access somewhere to set that business up, to get whatever approvals and licenses they need to do that business, and then how easy is it for others to come and live in the town to work in that business. So I think it's really important that we keep an eye on the availability of land and the cost of actually accessing and developing in that land, and the more small business activity we get in the town, the more livable it will become, and the more innovative and creative, and the more attractive then for others to live there and be part of a residential workforce.
Exactly, Deirdre, and thank you for mentioning small business, because as Mark and Clayton were saying earlier, they really want to be able to access local suppliers, as much as they can, but often those suppliers aren't there, and a lot of those are those really small businesses. And I have to say, I'm also the chair of the Small Business Development Corporation, and we know in Karratha they have 50% less small businesses for their population and for what's happening in the city than the benchmark is. So we know that providing opportunities or incentives or rewards or making it easier for small businesses to start and having land available, that's a massive issue and is a real key to diversification as well. So thanks, Deirdre. Richard, on that question on what to do to be competitive and where the competition will come from.
Thank you. Certainly on a broad context, the need for iron ore is still growing around the world. We're watching India, shift in its policies and start to make very similar noises to China did 10 or 15 years ago. We're watching changes in Indonesia or in that area where we can transport very quickly and easily to them. The work that's being done now has invested a lot of money in infrastructure, and to repeat that infrastructure somewhere else at anywhere near the price is going to be very, very hard in the future. So it's a very positive outlook in that sense. For us as a regulator, just in the discussion that's gone, it took us a long time to get to be able to free up the water from dewatering pits to be able to use for agriculture. Thankfully that's been done. There's people in the room that helped us through that. That and other regulatory barriers that are identified we're going to need to maintain to keep it in a place where it is very competitive. And so the things that we can control of that around the things that we have in our legislation, so it's working those through over the next years to maintain the same level of interest and investment that's there. On a personal note, people in the room might not know that I spent 10 years up in the Northern Territory with a very young family when I first went up there. I think if I went to the Northern Territory now with the same young family, it'd be very hard to come back. Yeah. I haven't lived in the Karratha, but having been there several times over the last couple of years, I'm sure if I had taken my wife and young family up there now, we'd probably be there for the rest of our lives. So it's sort of one of those places that has great appeal, and it's continuing to build on that.
Absolutely, absolutely, Richard. Couldn't agree more. And I have another question for you, and I will ask the rest of the panel to answer it, but I'll start with you. So today, look, we've talked a lot about the Pilbara City's vision, and one of the things that's come through time and time again is the reason they've made such progress in a really short period of time and really transformed that city, and it's become a city, is because it was completely collaborative, you know, and all three tiers of government, corporate, private, community groups, everyone understood they all had a role to play and understood what that role was. It was just this great example of a collaborative approach to positive change. So I suppose how can the Australian and the West Australian government better improve the current policy environment to support long-term collaborative growth? Because really that's what it has to be.
Thank you. It's so just mentioned I was away from WA for about 10 years. When I came back, the first thing that hit me, and this was in 2009, was that there was a lot more collaboration across the government departments than before I'd left, and that's only improved. So in terms of getting a better understanding, a better policy environment, this continued collaboration and working across departments, so that whether it's the town planners or ourselves in prospectivity and looking at mineral resources, that there's planning done so that there's not the conflict. It's a multiple land use type framework where government sets the policy and lets the market work its way through. We're seeing that emerge in areas that used to be very tightly regulated, and there's under the current government, and I expect future governments, there'll be more of this deregulation to allow things to develop well, still not saying we're going to compromise safety or environment, but get the things that are impediments out of the way.
Fantastic. Deidre?
I think, Kitty, your point about the collaboration is just so important. Yeah. You know, Pilbara Cities was a big policy put in place in response to what had been seen in the Pilbara, but it was only through the collaboration and the leadership within the town that Karratha was really able to grasp the opportunities that policy. So at a state and federal level you had the willingness, but it really took that local drive to bring the what. You know, what is it that we actually want our community to be? So I've worked with a number of different regions, and those that have a conversation happening between government, business, state entities, so local government, business and state and federal entities, where you can get to a point where it doesn't matter who you talk to in the town, they all know what the next priority is in terms of development for the town. I think that is absolutely critical for driving progress, and I think there is no better example in Western Australia in recent history than Karratha of seeing that deliver results. In terms of the state, we would go back to, and federal government, we would go back to our first principles, and that is that the most important things are making sure that red tape and costs of doing business are kept to an absolute minimum. There's absolutely the opportunity to come in with some large infrastructure development, but unless those other settings are right, they will hold back development. Federally, an increasingly difficult area is workplace relations, and I think we're really seeing a need for the return to the flexibility that changed the Pilbara region in terms of industrial relations in the 90s and early 2000s. We probably need to keep an eye on exploration. You know, as Richard has said, there is still lots of demand for our resources, so we shouldn't regard future, we should continue to seek our resources as a comparative advantage, and that demand will drive investment. So we want that investment to come to Australia, so we want that pipeline of future projects to be there. And taxation is also really important. We need to make sure that our taxation regime is competitive for that investment. And the federal government's recent changes to taxation on employee share schemes is an example of a policy that I think is exactly going in the right direction.
Exactly. Taxation and approvals and planning. Mark and Clayton, I will ask you the same question. So how the West Australian and Australian governments can better improve current policy environment, and I think there has been a lot of work done in that area to support long-term collaborative growth, and it's really also interesting and important to get that industry perspective as to maybe the barriers you see.
No, I certainly perceive there's a lot of changes going on, not only in red tape and bureaucracy, but I also sense some genuine relationship building, collaboration. I guess the regulator is one prime aspect of that, where you can either be the sort of pure police, or you can be someone who's raising the standards with us and working with industry. And I sense that approach is coming quite well. And so I think that's a good positive step.
Yeah.
And of course, anything that could sort of improve the minimization of bureaucracy and time and dealing with multiple, state and federal type of requirements, that if that could be harmonized in some way, that will also be a good thing to do. But we have to, that's part of the reality that we face when we have to get a project like the town project through. There's quite a lot of steps that we have to go through. But I think it has been quite a good, healthy relationship anyway with everyone involved. The safety side of it still continues to bug me a bit, because I still feel with the amount of plants up there now that there could be better collaboration in terms of us not reinventing the wheel, and we're trying to raise the bar in some type of common forum, common tools, common passports, which could be used to in a way give you more predictable outcomes.
Yes.
And not be surprised when an event happens, even though we're all responsible operators from multinational companies and so on. We've seen the benefits in other countries as well when you have these kinds of clusters of plants. So it would be better, I think, if we collaborated with the contractor industry and as industry and with government to ensure that we have these type of common standards. Just as you see, for example, in the offshore platforms and things like that. But there's none for onshore industry.
So it's really setting the standard that everyone works to and raising that standard, by everyone having to work together to the same standards. Thanks, Mark. Clayton?
I think it's a lot of what everybody else has already said around just keeping the processes as streamlined as possible. And I think it's really the collaboration, and having worked around the world in different parts, I've been real pleased with the collaboration that's happening. Groups are actually sitting down and talking, and not just talking, but actually listening. And I think that's where the real value is getting both the regulator as well as the industry to actually listen to each other. What are those concerns? And then how can we streamline it? And then, as always, just bringing stability around tax regime and keeping it simple, clear, and steady, so that as we invest, we know what we can plan for and how to manage that going forward. I think the last one that I'd throw in, maybe slightly different, is about providing those good, reliable services that we need, that the government can really help to make sure that they're good, solid, and help, once again, keep raising that bar of the attractiveness of the Pilbara and Karratha.
So the essential services.
Essential services is what I'm talking about. Thanks.
Exactly. And that's a challenge for the whole of regional Western Australia because of the size of the state, but you're right, we need those essential services. I think I will ask this question for everyone. I'll start, Richard, with you. It's more, we've talked about a lot today about the Pilbara City's vision. Do you think, and so much has been done to improve the position of the whole Pilbara region so that we're ready and we can sort of take on the next thing and be sort of a little bit ahead. Do you think that we are on the front foot as far as our ability to respond to the demands of economic and industry growth? Like, do you think we are now? I'm not saying we're miles ahead, but we're on the front foot and in a stronger position, or is there a lot more work to be done? Or
no, thank you. It's just reading the paper, and I'm sure as Anketel was talked about today. The planning around future corridors. So talking about what we're discussing within government, it certainly is a lot more advanced than it ever has been before. There's a lot of work done to identify future growth points, areas of ability to have the correct infrastructure there in the right time frame. A bit of that though is chicken and egg, and just to pick up Dorothy's
Deidre?
I know Deidre very well, and so she'll beat me up for that later.
That's all right, Robert.
Yeah, thank you. The work we do going around the world, talking about the exploration opportunities in Western Australia, and a lot of places doesn't need much talking up. And so if you want to talk to anyone about iron ore, they're going to come and talk to us in the main. But I think that we're talking about the ability to look at various other things, whether it's tourist agriculture. There's a raft of other mineral and oil and gas opportunities adjacent to existing iron ore, or certainly not far away in real terms of the distances we work in the Pilbara. And so are we ready for the next wave of activity that's coming? Yes, I think we are, in terms of there are surveys around the world that sort of rank where you sit in that sort of sphere. And one called the Fraser survey last year put West Australia as still the number one exploration investment opportunity in the world, and so that translates just as well to the Pilbara and Karratha as it does to Kalgoorlie and gold. So there is that opportunity there. The planning's been done in government. Will there be enough spent on time to develop the infrastructure? Very separate sort of question, but the planning is so much better off than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree there. Thanks, Richard. Deidre?
One of the areas that we've been working in is workforce planning, and in oil and gas, we're actually yet to see the ramp up in exports that we're currently experiencing in iron ore. We're going to go from 6 operating LNG plants around Australia to 21 over the next 6 years. So that's going to be a huge increase in demand for process operators to work in those plants. So without our background in training, we've actually been working with industry to bring together a collaborative training model so that we can start training people to go into those process plant operator jobs now, using the available facilities, but knowing that those people will go out into a broader industry. And the advantages that come from that is obviously advantages for local people who will be able to go into those industries as those jobs come online, and also for industry, making sure that there's enough people coming through that pipeline, that we don't see a sort of a massive increase in demand and cost for those people as those projects come into production, and also just productivity and gains and cost management of costs through a collaborative approach. So that's been something that we've been very pleased to be able to bring our experience to bring that together across the industry.
Extremely important. Mark?
So I understood the question to be, is Karratha the front foot, or there's more work to be done?
And it would be good to know that from an industry point of view, you're feeling that we don't think we're miles ahead, but we're at least ahead. We're not playing catch up, I suppose.
Yeah, and of course, just being a relatively new player, 2.5 years old,
Yep.
I think there's been tremendous changes in the last 2.5 years in terms of livability in the city, and there's always good feedback in terms of the schools. Of course, there's improvements in health, but I understand there's a big health campus coming. We see the changes in the airports and the highways and things like that. But I guess one test for us now is, in hiring the new people for the TAN plant, can we attract people to live in Karratha? And it's not bad, actually. So we can attract people to live in Karratha. It may probably have been much more difficult before, but I think now that's a good test that we can actually get people and attract them in Karratha.
Yeah, exactly. Clayton?
I think I think we're in a much different spot now than we were 5 or 6 years ago. In fact, I think we're in a very strong position. And I was talking with Chris and John during the break before this about how now that we're actually talking and listening, we're better understanding each other, what's coming. I think when the last cycle came, I think we were still talking at each other, and we missed it, and we got a little bit caught up in what we were doing ourselves rather than how we were helping each other. And so by the time some of the land came open, we'd already built what we needed, and we're moving on. And I think what I'm seeing different this time is actually being invited and having a chance to sit down and talk about different opportunities about what does the next 3 years look like, what does the next 10 years look like, how are we seeing the different cycles play out with the city. And that way I think we can make sure that the right bits are open, whereas I think it, to be honest, it felt like when I first arrived here, it was just a mad out rush.
Yeah.
And everybody had head down, going hard to get what they could. And I think we forgot that basic ingredient of communication.
Yep.
And I feel it's in a much better spot now.
Exactly. And even by our conversations that we've had today, Clayton, that's just the feeling that you're getting from everyone that you're talking to, from every side, all over WA, but in the Pilbara region, because it was just a crazy time of everyone was just so flat out that you sort of really couldn't see the woods for the trees. But now everyone's been able to take a bit of a breath, and there's that sort of long-term collaborative planning happening. Yep. Well, amazingly, we're nearly at the end of our time for this session. So we've probably just got about 3 or 4 minutes left. So I don't know if each of you just want to give a quick closing remark. We really appreciate that all 4 of you have joined us today, and we will be having a break after this, so if you're able to stay around, I'm sure there's lots of our delegates that would love to have a chat to you. So Richard, I don't know if the 4 of you would like to just close off?
No, very simply, back in 2009 when I came down, I gave out lots of cards, having been away from West Australia for a while, and everyone I gave a card to said, if you need anything, give me a call, come knock on the door. Got inundated, which was sign of the times. Those same people are welcome to come and see me now. It's tailored off, but if there are things going on in the industry that you think we can do better as the Department of Mines and Petroleum, please let us know. We'll obviously have a chat to you about it. If we can do something, we'll have a go at doing it. If we can't, we'll tell you why. So it's a plug. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you. Thanks, Richard. You're more than welcome. And I have to stop myself from calling you Peter Sellers, so I'm glad that you did that first and it wasn't me. Because it's normally me that does those sorts of things, I can assure you. Deirdre.
Kitty, I'd just like to congratulate John Lally and the Karratha Chamber of Commerce and Industry for bringing an event like this together, but for the work that they do. And business is just such an important part. All businesses in a community are just such an important part of that collaboration and that dialogue that has seen Karratha take such an important leap. So we're here to help you. Thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. Mark?
Yeah, I would congratulate the Chamber as well, and say this is really good timing that this is coming about with the development going on in Karratha. I would also say, based on some of the comments I heard from the regional minister and the premier this morning, that in terms of making Karratha a sustainable city for the future, and it sounds like all the pieces are coming together slowly. Where we fit into this picture of being a downstream plant taking raw materials in Western Australia converting it into a value-added product, going further downstream to make a product for the local mining sector, and at the same time having a philosophy of having the employees live there with their families. We're not fly in, fly out, so they are going to the malls, they're going to the restaurants, they're going to have the children in schools. So we are part and parcel of the community there for the long term, and we have that philosophy in mind. So I think we share some of the ambitions, so to speak, of the development.
Exactly. Thanks, Mark. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Clayton.
I just think I'd like to say I think it's a real exciting time for Karratha and what's happening up there. You know, a lot of people say the boom's gone and everything's going to go away, but the fundamentals for the iron ore are solid. We're still shipping our product. There's still a strong demand for it, and there will be for a long time. We've invested a lot of money up there. We're not going to go anywhere. So what we're really pleased about is the way the city's really starting to blossom. It's not just a mining camp. It's actually got some really solid amenities, some good attractiveness. The goal is how do you keep the momentum going? How do we keep building it and continuing to drive that forward? We still have a business to run. We're still going to be a part of that community and do that. But I think the real opportunity is there, and I think there's been some great lessons learned over the last 5 years. We can't lose sight of those and continue to build on those going forward. So I think I wish everyone the best of luck with it.
Thanks so much, Clayton. And ladies and gentlemen, before we break, we have got a little treat for you, but can you put your hand together for Clayton Walker, Mark Loquan, Deidre Willmott and Richard Sellers?